If you haven't heard about Brewer's Advantage, this might be the episode for you. Brewer's Advantage is when your opponents don't know what you actually have going on in your deck. Today we have a very special guest, Holden Prio. We're going to go over who he is, how he got here, some tricks of the trade he's learned along the way, as well as some advice for you, the listeners, how to become a brewer and obtain the Brewer's Advantage. Stick around towards the end where we will be going over a deck tech of how to win with a silence that's better than Grand Abolisher.
Well, welcome back to Midweek Meta. I'm your host, Maddie, and as you can see right here, we got a lovely co-host, Nate, here. What's going on, my man?
Oh, I'm just so happy to be here. We have a guest today. So our guest today is Holden Prio. I don't really want to talk too much over him. He's a big inspiration for a lot of the brews that I do and things like of that nature. But I would like Holden Prio himself to kind of introduce himself and maybe talk about his introduction to Magic and how he got to where he's at.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, first of all, for having me on. Really, really appreciate it. I've watched your content. I love what you all are doing. And I think it's really very genuine, which is super cool. And I love anytime that there's content where you can really tell that the people are passionate about it and they're really kind of digging on it and they're vibing off of each other and they're working with building a community. Like all that stuff is awesome to see. So thank you, really. But yeah, I guess just a little bit about me. I'm based out of the Arizona area. I'm in Tucson, and I actually started playing Magic in 1999. I've been playing Magic for quite a long time. There's something about it, right? There's like the kind of the lore and the vibe and like the flair of Magic, but there's also that underlying part, which is the real kind of, as cheesy as it is to say, like the magic of Magic, which is Richard
100%.
Garfield's like mathematical, logical kind of mind underneath everything that really makes it all tick. And I was hooked. I mean, so yeah, I started it around that time. And yeah, oh my gosh, I can remember opening booster because we played kitchen table for like about a year. And I think the first time that I realized that there were like stores that had Magic cards, like all that.
You started in 99, played a little bit 2001, 2002. You're 13, 14. You hinted to it. You jumped into tournament scene. Where did you start? Let's start there.
So actually, so basically, I didn't jump into tournament scene. I just started like brewing my own combo decks that technically were legal in the block at that period of time that I was playing in. So for some perspective, like some of the cards that I started to like that caught my eye when I was doing kitchen table Magic before we really started like going to this, there was a local card shop called Mountain View Sports Cards. And a big shout out to Arcanum Sanctorum. That's the place where we play on Thursday nights in Tucson. If anybody's ever in Tucson, please hit me up on Twitter or on Discord or Moxfield. We'd love to come host you. We've already done that a couple times for people who come in from out of town for like conferences and stuff. But anyways, I ended up, what card that caught my eye was Candelabra of Tuanos. The 1 mana, very important mono artifact, which I didn't fully understand as a kid. And so I just thought, hey, it says pay X mana, untap X lands. So if you just have one land that makes more mana than one, like something that has like a Utopia Sprawl on it, or I guess at the time, any soul land, like an Ancient Tomb or something like that, you could just go infinite because you can just keep tapping and untap. But it's a mono artifact. You can only activate it once per turn, and obviously it's been eroded in such a way where it has a tap symbol. There's all these old cards that are like super busted cards from like Mirage and Antiquities and all this stuff that were real combo decks in the formats that they were in. But as a kid, I was exploring them without any context. And so I started to kind of like figure things out on my own, and it was really interesting to me. And then as I started playing at Mountain View Sports Cards, some time goes by and Mirrodin Block comes out. And Mirrodin Block was this special moment for me where it was like I was old enough and I had grasped the game mechanics and the rules enough to the point where I started to realize how truly broken artifact mana and artifact lands and all that was. I mean, you're talking about a set that it gave us the 5-color artifact lands. It gave us, it gave us Skull Clamp. It gave us Brood Star.
That taps and can't do anything. It's like, no, I got infinite mana. See how I'm extra? I just imagine like we're all CDH players here. We explain our combos and there's the 2 people across from us like that's not how that works. And the third person's like, yeah, that's how it works, man. It's pumping you up. you can misplay and then call you out, and you're like, oh man.
There's that feeling of like, we want to include people in the community. You want to like hype people up. You want to help them learn. What's crazy is at our shop, at our local shop, over the course of the past like 3 weeks, we've had so many new players come in. Not just like new players to Magic, obviously, but there was a person who actually was new to Magic, and they just joined our CEDH local event with like a pre-con. And what's cool about our local shop is I was straight up real with it. I was like, listen, I'm happy to help you. We'll all help you. We can help you to proxy a deck if you want, but I just want to be super realistic because I don't want you to like lose your $10 for entry or whatever. It's probably not going to cut it, right? And what was so cool about it is they just wanted to play. They just wanted to learn and to like see how it would work. And then I had some extra cards with me. Some other people did. We started, here's a Dark Ritual. Oh, cool. Here's Rite of Flame. Here's the level of cards you should be playing, like that kind of stuff. And I love that. I love that about this game. I love the gathering of Magic the Gathering. Like, there's a reason I could be going and playing video games, right? Video games are insane right now. Like, it's 2025. Video games are crack. But I'd much rather play Magic the Gathering with some real human beings and, like, have the experience. You know, that's a big part of it for me.
Playing in person kicks butt. Like, you can't beat that. But jump on a spell table game, like, if you would have said, hey, you guys, I want to check this brew out, and, like you said, you Blue Farm game, Chris here, once you record this, build your Blue Farm deck. I want to see Holden. I'll bring Rocco or something, but I want to see him beat a Blue Farm deck because it's a scary deck. I hate to say it. I've played against tournament against it, and it's a deck that I can win against, but it's a hard deck. But you guys, you both look like, Blue Farm, nothing. That's cheesecake. If it's Kidden, though. Kidden.
Here's the thing. Blue Farm is a good deck, right? It's a very powerful deck, and clearly, right, it puts up the numbers. It is very good colors, like green's kind of the worst color in our format, even after the bans, right? Like, we understand that, but I don't know how about you feel about it, Holden, but like, for me, it just bores the hell out of me. I just don't. I know exactly what to do. I know to hold interaction. I know that I gotta draw cards. I know I need to wait for my moment to win. Like, that it has to, you have to find that narrow spot where you can go, okay, here's my Thassa or here's my Underworld Breach. I understand it. I understand 100%, but I just get bored by it easily. For me, it's not very fun, and I will play it, but
yeah, TNT is my kryptonite, like you, Blue Farm. I play it. I had a deck. You watch me play it. I'm good at it, but I hate it. It's so boring.
Let's see, you know, that what that comes down to me is that what is it that you're like looking to get out of this game? And for me, like, I take pride in the fact that I'm a brewer, and I don't shit on other people who play like stock lists from other people who are good brewers or good deck tuners, because to me, it's like, well, cool. Like, you found the thing you like to do, which is maybe you're more of like a tournament grinder, or you're someone who like wants to take a deck and like make it their own and really enjoy it and like learn all the best lines and like intuitively know exactly what to do. And everyone has the kind of their own thing that they want to do in Magic for sure. But I agree with you. I mean, it's to me, it's not my cup of tea because it's mostly solved. You can do fun stuff. And I actually kind of was thinking about this, you know, with some of the prep that you asked me about before this show, is like, there, to me, that's not where I usually start with brewing, but I think I've kind of started to come around to, you know what? Sure. Give me Rograk Thrasios and I'll brew it from the ground up. And it's going to look way different than the way Sam Black brews it, with this kind of Otterball theme and all this other stuff, which is super cool too. But I used to think like, well, I don't want to play Rograk Thrasios at all because it's solved. And so I'm trying to break that kind of like heuristic that I've always kind of leaned on in my mind, which is, if anybody's playing it at all and it's putting up numbers at all, then I've got to be a hipster and I got to find it before it was cool and blah, blah, blah. I mean, I'm still kind of like that, but I try not to be as much like that these days because it helps.
Did you train me and Nate? Like, what is this? Are you like our child? Like, because we're the same way. Like, I don't want to play that deck because it's popular. Like, we make those comments. Now that you're talking about it, it's like, and it's so cool now watching seeing in person both of you guys' gears turn, and now my own turn, because talking with you, but also dealing with Nate for the last year or so, it's made you think. It's how you brew. It's, I can take this stock list, like you said, and power to you. Like, there is lists out there that are awesome. You want to play Kinnan? Look up Wounded list. Look up Comedians list. Look up, I hate to say it, Chris's list. Not hate to say it. Don't like look at Chris's list. He's a good player.
Don't look at Chris's list.
Whatever you do, don't look at his list.
It's linked down below if you want to look at it. But I'm just saying, but you can grab those and go play the tournament. But like you said, we can grab those, but we want to brew on them. And you guys, I want to get back to back to you, Holden. I want to talk about your history here because we keep going into brewing, but you said you hit a clock, you hit a like not a wall, but you started brewing on these objects of pieces that were already combo pieces, but now you're seeing it, and like you said, you kind of hit that wall. So let's jump back to that.
I hit a block. I hit the Mirrodin block is what I hit, man. There were artifacts
there
everywhere.
You go.
And for me,
I was forgetting the word. I was like, what is it called? Block, wall, set. No, it's set now, but the block. There you go. You hit that. You hit that.
I mean, but some people consider that. I mean, I don't know. Some people consider like the Urza Saga block the most broken block just because, like, I mean, Tolarian Academy. Like, what the hell? Like, what the actual hell? I mean, Guys Cradle, all those other cards, but like, I mean, Frantic Search, like all these just like broken mechanics, untapping lands, like, but yeah, I mean, and I mean, not to mention Memory Jar. I mean, like these are just cards that like completely just warped the entire concept of like the way Magic was being played and stuff. But for me in Mirrodin block, that's a busted set to be like live opening packs, pre-releasing like that kind of stuff, and like learning with everyone. Like there was a moment where a lot of people were thinking like oh well, Skull Clamp is the most broken thing you can be doing, and then the meta starts to shift and people start to realize, well, yeah, that's broken. You could draw a bunch of cards. You know what's even more broken than that? It's just kill your opponent on turn 2 or turn 3 in standard back at that point in time because of cranial plating, artifact lands, or a Tooth of Chisgoria, Scale of Chisgoria, all these affinity. Like, so you're just like dumping Cheerios into play. Like Cheerios are just 0 mana rocks. Yeah. Jumping Cheerios into play and then just smushing your opponent with an instant speed activation of your cranial plating. I mean, these were just like, this was a wild time to be like a kid experiencing. It wasn't standard back then, it was called Type 2, but to be experiencing Type 2. And what I did, which I think was really kind of like an important moment for me, is I took a step back from everything that was happening and I was like, hold on a second, I think I've got something. And I had my first brew, my real first brew. And it was Composite Golem, which is a 6 mana artifact creature that says, it doesn't have to tap, it just says sacrifice it, add Wooburg to your mana pool. Okay. Then there's Rush of Knowledge, which is a 5 mana, so it's blue and 4 generic for, I believe it's a sorcery, and it says draw cards equal to the highest converted mana cost among artifacts you control. And then Mycosynth Golem, which was an 11 mana, like 4/5 with affinity for artifacts, that also said all other artifact creatures in your deck also have affinity for artifacts. And then I built this insane kind of like engine where you got to a certain point, you slammed the Mycosynth Golem, and by the time you were able to resolve it for like 4 or 5 mana, all of a sudden you now have enough artifacts where your Composite Golem is free. So now you play the Composite Golem affinity for artifacts, crack it for Wooburg, Rush of Knowledge, draw 11 cards because the Composite Golem, the CMC is 11. So I built this engine to just draw through my whole deck. And on the very last one, or the last bit of mana that I needed, I was playing Bosch Iron Golem as my win condition, which is just like an 8 mana artifact creature that you can like pay a red and sack an artifact and fling it at somebody. So I'm just like just like fling artifacts at people. And I was winning games as like a kid with a brand new, completely homebrew deck. And obviously I still like that memory is core to me. Like I still remember all the cards of the deck that I built and everything. And it was so much fun. I had a blast. I came back in 2017 and I had missed so much. I had missed like Khans of Tarkir. I had missed Innistrad. I had missed like these like sets that like people like, to them that's Magic, like Ravnica, the original Ravnica. And what was so cool is when I came back, I came directly back into Modern. And I just remember my buddy handed me 8 rack, the Modern deck where you just discard your opponents and play the rack. And that was like, all right, I'm hooked. I'm back in. And I found some of my older cards. But yeah, so that was kind of my cycle back. And then once I came back and got into Modern, I played Modern for quite a while. Faithless Looting got banned while I was playing. There was like the whole Hogak era. All that crazy stuff was going on. I got pretty big into Pauper because, again, that's another brewer's paradise. Like for any of your listeners who are into CEDH and you want to get into like a cheap 60-card format that's actually like really deep, really impactful, really powerful, and doesn't have planeswalkers in it, woohoo, you get to play Pauper. So Pauper is like awesome. You get to do all kinds of cool stuff there. So for me, that was it. It was like I kind of found Legacy and Pauper as Modern started to take this weird, it started getting like kind of power crept by Fire Design and obviously by Modern Horizons and everything like that. And I slowly kind of made my way out of Modern and got really deep into Legacy and Pauper. And I only got into CDH actually. So this is a weird thing. never played Commander literally at all. Like never played casual Commander at all in any way. And the first time I played like a game of Commander is because a friend like made me build an Ekusar deck. And the way I built it, he was like, "You kind of just built this like CEDH." And I was like, "What does that mean?" And he's like, "Well, you're just like trying to win." And I was like, "Yeah, that's how Magic works." Yeah. And he was like, "Well, no,
that's what I've always done."
They were like, "Well, in Commander, you kind of want to like all have fun, and it's like a chance to hang out." And I was like, "Okay, you got the wrong guy. Like, I'm sorry, but like,
we don't have fun here."
Yeah,
my fun is watching you cry.
Yeah, I extract the fun from your tears, but yeah. So that was it. I mean, I played like literally one game of Commander, casual Commander, I guess, and then I discovered that I was like, oh, I should just be playing CDH, and I found like Play to Win's channel, and then I found a local group in town to start playing with, and I immediately dove in.
You've given us an awesome history of what you've done, what you've been playing. I'm going to take a wild guess and say, out of the three big things, a grinder, a brewer, or you're here for the gathering, you're a brewer, aren't you?
The way I think about it is if I could only pick one, I'm a brewer, but it's like, I'm here for the gathering. I have a grinder mentality when it comes to playing, and those feed into I need to be brewing. Like if you handed me the net deck and told me I had to go grind tournaments, that actually like would seem soulless to me. And it's totally fun for other people, but for me, it just wouldn't track. Or if you handed me a casual deck and told me to like just go hang out with my buddies and like just play a game night of Commander, I'd be like, no thanks, I'm gonna go hang out with my dogs and my wife. So like it's just it's just a different, and it's like I said, no shade on anybody else. Everybody enjoys their thing their own way. I'm never trying to like yuck somebody's yum, but for me, it's brewing. Like, and that's where I geek out too. Like I will be driving down the road and it's just been boom. Like I just have this like this. Oh, you can pair this with that, and what sort of shell would I put it in? Boom! I'm picking up the phone while I'm driving, and I'll just like call a buddy and be like, all right, hear me out. Do you have a second? I got to talk to you about Magic for a second. And they're like, all right, yeah, what do you got? And then I'll walk them through it, and they're like, oh, that's really sick. Or they'll be like, I don't know, that doesn't sound great. And I'm like, yeah, actually, you're right. Maybe that's not good enough.
That is so awesome. Well, Nate, I got to ask you too. I have the same question for you. I've been playing with you. I know you brew like crazy, but what are you, Nate? Are you a grinder, a brewer, are you a gatherer? Where do you sit on this, my man?
No, I've considered that thought before. And I think deep down I'm more about the gathering, to be perfectly honest, because for me, and I've said it on the channel, I don't know how many times at this point, but I want people to play what they are happy with, right? I've said it on the channel too, that like for me, I find Blue Farm boring. I don't want to play it. That is not to say that it is not a good deck and you shouldn't play it. If someone's out there and they're like, I want the stock good stuff Blue Farm, go for it if that's what makes you happy. Like that's what I want. That's what I want for people. But I think what happens with me is I get in my head where I want to have fun in the way that I want to have fun. And so when I think to myself, like Raga Draga, for instance, when I started brewing that up, I just hated Bowmaster. I was like, I hate this card. This card sucks. I hate playing against it. I hate seeing it. And I was like, what just prevents me from having to deal with this stupid monstrosity in our format? And I just do some digging, and I was like, this kind of stops my dorks from dying. So I'm going to tinker with this for a little bit, right? So, and that's where kind of like my brewer mentality goes, where for me, I'm not necessarily looking for 100% the best thing to do all of the time, but at the same time, I am trying to find something that I find interesting and fun and taking it to the max that I possibly can and trying to tune it as I go. Okay. It's kind of the way I like to do things.
I think that's a great way to definitely explain how, I hate to say, I'm going to sound like a nerd here, but compare you two, I think that's both of you. Like you made a hint, Holden. You said you brew, but then you want to take it, you want to show this awesome brew, but then you want to brew it even more. You want to, like, I hate to say it, like an alchemist circle. You want to refine it, show it off. Look how pretty this is. Oh, I can make it even tighter over here. Tighten it back up. And Nate, you're the same way. Look how cool alchemist circle I made. Oh, you could do this on Blue Farm instead. No, look at this one I made. And I think it's really cool. And I hope we kind of pick your guys' brain here. We should jump more into this. Dive into the brains of Holden here, that has some awesome builds. You can jump on his Mox build. Chris will link it down below for us. Please, Chris, and editing room, future now. But also you have Nate here. He's our brewer of Turning Point Meta here. If we need something brewed, some ideas, he's who we go to. Well, I used to go to Nate. Now I'm going to Holden because he's in my Discord. Shout out to
That's
my
fine.
Discord.
That's fine.
Jump down below if you want to talk to Holden here. Yeah, absolutely, man. And if you have a Discord you want people to join into, we'll definitely get that link for you down below.
I just have the RAL Discord. Like, if people have RAL specific questions, they can always jump in there. And there's a bunch of people in there now, which is super awesome.
And I was on a side note that it is so cool that there's all these like deck, like not even like just by it, like RAL's by itself, not a partner, but some of the partner commanders where it's Tim to Discord and it's like, oh, here's the 16 partners that we run, but it's like we only care about these 4.
What about Tim to Malcolm? Shout out Ray Ray. That's my homie. If you want to go Esper, there's always Tivit. There's always Master of Keys and like stuff like that. So
Marnius. Now I don't know if you have any crazy brews. I'd love to pick your brain on that because we have a buddy at our shop that's looking at making a Marnius. If I can give him some hints.
No, listen, I don't know shit about Marnius, but I will tell you that if you're looking for someone who knows everything there is to know about Marnius, like the Marnius guy, you should check out the Thunder Conductor. He's got his own YouTube channel, his own Discord, all that stuff. He is a total badass, and he's also like genuinely the nicest person I've ever met on the internet. Like, he's got like this huge smile, super welcoming. His Discord is like the coolest place ever. They're like all about brewing. There's all these different threads of different brewing decks and stuff, like super cool. But yeah, he took down, or maybe it was like a top 4 with Marnius a while back, and he's always been putting in additional work on the list, and he knows all these cool lines, and his play style, like he's really good at politicking. He's just like a great player and also a great brewer, so that's super cool.
Okay, I'll check him out. Well, thank you for linking for telling us about that.
Genuine shout out to Thunder Conductor, because I wouldn't even know who Holden Prio was if it wasn't for that channel, to be totally honest. Like, honestly, yeah, good. It's shout out to Thunder Conductor because he's a good guy.
Yeah. Let you guys think about this. How do you choose your next brews? Like, what's the thought process? You're like, do you see a card get spoiled? Do you play like you're playing a game, you see it get played across, and you're like, I can brew that. I can do this. Like, where do you sit on this? Nate, you're thinking pretty hard on the tank. I'll let you start with this one, Holden.
Sure. Yeah. So for me, it's actually pretty straightforward. And I think in a way, Nate was actually, maybe I'm reading between the lines too much, but it sounded like he was kind of hinting at this similar sort of concept. But for me, it's almost always meta dependent. So like, I'm not thinking like, what's the best deck ever that like everybody doesn't realize is the best deck, and like I'm some genius and I'm gonna find it before anybody. Like, I'm not thinking that way, because there's a lot of smart people playing Magic, there's a lot of smart people playing CEDH, but the thing that I think a lot of people are missing is there's a bit of this echo chamber thing where it's like people start to get into this idea that like, okay, now we're in this grindy mid-range place, so they're all doing that, or previously it was like everybody's turbo, so we're all doing that. And for me, what I see is like, okay, let me take a look at the meta as a whole. Let me take a step back, like you were talking about with Bowmaster. It's like, all right, let me take a step back. There's a lot of Bowmasters going around. I still like playing Mana Dorks. They're a really powerful way to not feed a Mystic, but also like increase my ramp early in the game. So what's a deck I could play towards when you're talking about Ragged Dragon? And hey, who doesn't like a 7 or 8 foot Llanowar elf that's just like hulked out, like ready to rock? Like that's super cool, right? So that's a similar thing for me. It's meta dependent. And the other way that I think about what my next build or brew is going to be is a lot of times a specific interaction that a lot of time that like, I guess I think people have like yet to catch on to about how it works. And that it's like very powerful or broken. I draw a lot of inspiration from staying like basically very closely in tune with the other formats. So because I'm paying attention so much to Vintage, Legacy, and Modern and Pauper, I end up really kind of like discovering concepts that other, like Aspiring Spike in Modern is a great example. He's someone who is an amazing brewer, and he's kind of always iterating. And as soon as something is like solved and like everybody else starts copying him, he's already on to the next thing or the next 2 things, right? So if I am keeping that in the back of my mind and I'm like aware of kind of like on the fringe that like, oh, well, RAL is powerful and it's doing this thing that's really powerful in Modern. And then it clicks, oh, there's this really busted interaction with the fact that you can't do in Modern, which is in Commander, if RAL's your commander and he flips and then you ult him at the right loyalty point where his loyalty goes to 0 and he dies, where does he go? Well, you could just put him back to the command zone, and instead of costing 2 mana, which was dirt cheap to begin with, now he costs 4, and you've just Mind's Desired for 8 cards off the top. I'll flip him again on the spoiler sheet, like when it came out for MH3, and then I was watching Aspiring Spike talk about, and it was like kind of like this moment of like, oh, meta, like what can I do to like crush this one everybody's leaning on stacks. Okay, well, I can do this thing where every circumvent what's happening in the meta at the moment, or a broken interaction. And when it's perfect is when I can find both. And that's, I think, a big part of why Ral is so powerful right now, and why it's like a deck that's probably going to stand the test of time beyond just the current meta. So sorry, that was a long-winded answer, but yeah,
that is perfect. Like you said, like you thought about this a lot, and it gives me it's not just me. It gives the viewers an idea into sorry, it gives us an idea into how you brew. What about you, Nate? How do you brew? How do you choose?
Yeah, blow us away for sure.
Yeah, don't worry, I will. Don't you fret. No meta, right? How do I take what's going on and form it to what I want to do over the top? And so Ragged Dragon was a good example of that, right? Ragged Dragon was I didn't like Bowmasters. I don't like feeding Rhystic Studies and Mystics Remoras, and Ragged Dragon is a big mana deck, so I will always pay for these things because I don't care. And
for everybody, well, for that, you don't pay for anybody else's, but you always pay for mine. Okay,
certainly do.
Yeah,
I certainly
always.
do.
What I like?
Go ahead. You can leave that. You can leave.
Yeah,
you can leave that in the chat.
Right.
You bet your ass I do. It's not obviously meant to go like really fast, but it's all creature combo, and I'm giving myself another color. I'm giving myself silences. I'm giving myself more protection. I'm giving myself more removal, but still going with a smothering tie. Sure.
I love that card.
But I'm still giving
fan favorite. So.
But I'm still giving myself like a creature combo package, because right now that's just doing well when you don't really creature that's already hard to counter and it wins.
Oh my god, you're gonna love this brew that I've got. I'm
so excited. I'm so excited to hear about it.
No, you're totally just real quick. Spoilers to that. He teased this earlier when we were talking, and I don't know if Chris has it activated. This win line. I'm so excited, you guys. Shout out to the book. There we go. I'm gonna date myself there. Here's a fat box where your back of the book got the cards that you could get.
Yeah.
I would say that spoilers are, which was the whole like all your stuff has dredge, right? Right. Listen, man, I'm just saying. But I have a tendency to see those things, and then I start just digging at the EDH rec, and I start seeing if anyone's talked about it, and any like maybe come up with something like from a different list that had something similar, but maybe see, that's what we're talking about. So inspiration can come from spoilers for me, and also something for those that don't know me like personally, and Maddie can absolutely attest to this because this is just the truth, is that I have a tendency to watch a lot of games. Like if someone has to sit out for a game, I'm more than happy to sit out for a game, because like sometimes you see a certain interaction, or you see someone that like has played a certain piece or a certain combo, and you're like, I feel like if I could just tune that a little bit better, or just have like a different commander, I feel like I could work with that. I could piece that puzzle. Like maybe they're trying to fit a piece in the puzzle that's just not quite there, and you feel like you have that one card, and I'm going to build off that first, and then decide who I want to be. So it's really interesting when it's actually really interesting to hear Holden's takes on it, because they're actually a little bit different than mine, which I think is a good thing for people to understand, is that it can come from anywhere for me, right? Like I can just decide to walk over the casual table for just a second because, I just watched Maddie already win with his Captain America or whatever, so I go walk over to the casual table and I see a certain interaction and I'm like, hold on, wait a minute. Is that busted? Is that like, am I going crazy or is that busted? So then I get on my phone and I pull up Strifeball.
Speaking of interaction, I think it's funny. I wonder if it happens at your shop, Holden, but like our casuals, they're super nice people, but they don't like to interact with us. There's certain ones that like, like it's like vampires with the cross, like, competitive players, get away. But whenever they need a rules question, who do they go to? Who do they ask? Who do they want verification on?
When they call judge, you know what you say?
Not judge. You go, CEDH player.
New phone, who this? From the back of the room. Yeah, no, I feel that. Yeah, in ours, actually, I don't even know if there are commander players in our shop. Like when I say commander players, like non-competitive players in our shop. Like, it's actually kind of sad. The shop that I used to play at all the time in town ended up having to close down. And so this is a place where we came to them, like our whole community of CEDH players, where we were showing up every single week. We were having monthly large tournaments where people from Phoenix were coming down and all kinds of stuff. So we brought to them, hey, would you be interested in hosting us as a community? Here's the number of people that would show up. Here's the sorts of events we'd be interested in doing. Like, are you comfortable with like proxy or not? Like that kind of stuff. And they're just like the coolest people. And now we've gotten to know them as the shop owners and stuff. And it's a relatively newer shop, and they're awesome. So, but yeah, it's kind of surprising. At least maybe I'm wrong, but I just haven't seen a whole lot of casual players at that shop. Now at other shops though, I know exactly what you're talking about. That does happen for sure. But I like what you're talking about. I mean, like you can draw inspiration from anything, Like I was saying, I draw it from other formats, but drawing it from like casual commander pods and like seeing cool interactions that you wouldn't have thought about because they're not like the no bad card set of chamber thing where you're not going to learn and grow and like explore and like like break new ground if you aren't willing to make mistakes. And like there's like this idea of like killing your darlings, right? It's this concept of like something that everybody says is, and in my mind that's like what? Like that's like one of the best Magic cards ever printed. That's pack one, pick one in Vintage Cube. Like if you had all pieces of power, some people would argue maybe it's Ancestral Recall, maybe it's Time Walk, maybe it's Black Lotus, but like a lot of times Soul Ring is the card. Like it just does the thing. It's so powerful. And yet Yuriko wasn't playing it for a while. And to me, that was like one of those moments where I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, are there other cards like this that like maybe I should look at again,
No, absolutely. Well, not to be the bearer of bad news here, but how often do you stay on a deck before you say, go into the garbage?
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever said go into the garbage like ever in my entire life. So I don't know if I can directly answer the question that way. But I think I know what you mean.
So I would like $500, please, or do that again.
Also not how trademarks work.
Not quite how that pans out legally, but
are a great example of this. It's like, well, there were decks that were in that retired folder that it was like all of a sudden because the meta got like this crazy shakeup, I could maybe play again because now there's not Dockside. Like maybe I brewed a deck and then I realized, wow, this is so artifact and enchantment focused. The only way to win is to just like beat the hell out of all the Docksides, and there were Docksides everywhere in the meta. So I kind of just need to retire this deck because there's like not a good way to move it forward without bumping into that problem all the time. And I can't just like dedicate like 5 or 10 slots on my deck to like stopping the Dockside decks because then you just don't win other games. So like, okay, let's retire it for now. Then the bans happen and you're like, okay, maybe I should revisit this. So I don't really delete. I just kind of put them into like, I relegate them into the, the sunken place or whatever.
I do the same thing. I list it as like BD broken down or took cards to this deck or like you can't really fade it out, but like I have certain sleeves. I'm just like, okay, these are my Esper colors. These are my certain colors. So I can like, they're all in these colors. So I can only buy certain sleeves so it's faster. So I really do throw it. Well, I did throw a deck in the trash. I threw that one away. But what about you, Nate? Because you bring a new deck every week, man. I don't know how I don't see like a 6,000. Like, are you sponsored by Dragon Show before you got with us? Like, how do you re-sleeve all these decks, man?
You want to know how? I sit right about here, and I just sit here and unsleeve and sleeve and unsleeve and sleeve, and all my sleeves and stuff are like, right, well, this is a box of Cheez-Its, but ignore that. But no, like for me, I also do the same thing. I don't delete lists. I unlist them, or I'll pull them, or I'll put them in private because I don't feel like I'm comfortable with the way that it is right now, or that I feel like I need to change up how it worked before. Like, for instance, I played Aranus and Street Urchin. Very, very powerful deck, very, very strong deck, but kind of relied heavily on Dockside. I'm still working on that list. I'm still trying to do something different with it, but I've also been working with can't remember his name now off the top of my head, but the guy who kind of spearheaded that whole list.
He's put up some results, right?
He has even after the bans, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But I don't delete lists. I don't delete lists. But the thing that I will say that I am bad at is that I don't always put my brews onto Moxfield. I probably just should. I just let people look at them. But typically I hold on to them. I test them. I see how I feel about them. And then so I'll swap out cards and figure out what's going on. And then if at the end of it, I go, you know what? Maybe this brew wasn't the best thing in the world. I have a tendency to break that habit and just put it on Moxfield.
So that's really interesting. Are you saying that the way you brew the deck in the first place is like you physically brew it in paper?
Yes.
Interesting. Because
I don't know if it's like because I visually like to see how things work a lot more than like, because if you explain to a combo to me, like if you're like, okay, so here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna take the Lion's Eye Diamond, and then you're gonna crack the Lion's Eye Diamond, and then you're gonna cast the Brain Freeze, and then you're on a World Breach, right? That's what you're gonna do. I will put that together eventually. But if you physically go, that's this, and then you have this 3 mana here, and then this mills, that's so much easier for me to understand.
Gotcha.
And I think that's just the way that I learn and understand things. So yeah, it is weird, I guess, to think about it now that I'm sitting here actually.
No,
I don't think it's weird.
I'm the same way.
In my mind, I was just thinking the literal only way to do it is the way I do it, and then that's obviously just such a ridiculous-minded way to look at anything. So as you're describing it, I'm like, oh yeah, not everybody does it my way. Like that's kind of cool.
How do you do it then? How do you do it, Holden?
I mean, for me, I brew. So the idea itself, like I was saying, like I could be in the shower, I could be driving down the street, I could be, talking to a buddy or whatever, or watching some video or whatever, and then all of a sudden there's like this click, like this aha, like, oh, that interaction is interesting. Wait a second, how would that work if? And I am one of those people who I go deep into the rules, like how all the rules themselves work, and like actually reading the full detailed Magic rules. And I'm really glad that I have, because it's allowed me to do some insane things. Like I built a Lotho deck that has a Doomsday pile in it using Bitter Ordeal. And it's kind of complicated and I'm not going to get into, but that deck gave me an amazing insight into doing some like super broken stuff with Abdel Adrian, like basically like World Gorger loops with like an animate effect, like a Necromancer and Animate Dead. So you animate the thing out of the yard, it comes into play, it removes all permanents, which removes the Animate Dead, and then it goes back into play, and you just keep looping it like this over and over again. Well, that was an example where I realized, oh my god, with Necropotence, you can Necro, and then in the end step during the discard phase, you have triggers because the discarded cards are to be exiled. Those are triggers. When the triggers go on the stack, normally nobody gets priority in the cleanup phase, but because the discarded cards hitting the actual graveyard itself, Necropotence is a triggered ability. You can, as long as you have 1 mana available, you can go Dark Ritual Necromancy. So you could flash in and animate Abdel Adrian out of the yard and win at instant speed in your cleanup step. Target player or players can't cast spells this turn. Well, when does this turn end? Is it during your end step at end of turn? Or is it in your cleanup phase? And if it's in your cleanup phase, is it before or after these triggered abilities would go on the stack to your discard? I found out it's actually before, which means the silence effect is actually over. Then the cards are discarded. Then the triggered abilities go on the stack. So then you are able to cast the Dark Ritual even in a turn that somebody cracked a Ranger Captain or a silence or whatever. So this is the sort of stuff. I don't know. I obviously I just kind of go a little bit crazy and geek out on.
Absolutely. Like it's
so like that stuff at Moxville. I have to like see it all and like be able to like kind of visualize it, and then I open up their playtest feature and I can like drag stuff to the different zones. So I'm just doing digitally what you're talking about doing physically.
Yeah.
As far as being able to physically see it move around and that kind of thing. So that's helpful. Yeah.
Whether it's standard, modern, vintage, I watch EDH games, I watch CEDH games. Like I will be playing a game on this monitor and watching Magic on this monitor and just consuming things to learn better. And so it's not that I won't use like OBS, or not OBS, but like spell table and things like that to like try to help me figure things out. But a lot of actions that I make, I connect them physically better. I'm not sure why that is, but it's just kind of the way I do it.
No, definitely makes sense. And through where you, as I said, when I go through it, look at it that way, or even how you walk through the steps of how Holden says, okay, I understand the rules here, here, and here work, where Nate's like, well, I want to see it. I need to see this interaction, then I can build off it. Correct? If I'm not wrong.
Yeah. That's a pretty good way of putting it.
Well, with that, how do you guys, like, when you're building, you got yours, Holden, you have this crazy idea, you were driving, you built it, Nate, you saw this crazy, have that one, I guess that's the question. Where it's like, what's the biggest thing you're looking for in that brew and a build?
I typically like to clump my combos.
Okay.
I like when combos, again, we'll just bring up my Ragged Dragon deck because it's something I brewed recently. The main combo that I go for is I use Temur Sabertooth to bounce up Hand Glacial Worm back to my hand over and over again. I give all my stuff plus infinity, well, plus a billion, whatever, if you wanted to go by the rules. And then I just swing out at people, right?
Yeah.
Hand Glacial Worm is not the only piece I have. I have Craterhoof Behemoth. I have Mawloc. I have Regal Force. So I have multiple different pieces that on their own feel very strong in a deck like Ragadraga that I can also use as part of that combo if I need to. Panglacial Worm's just the easiest one because I draw for it. So
Panglacial Worm, do you want to talk about that real quick? That is a card that most people do not know what it is. Do you want to know what it is?
Yeah, absolutely. So Panglacial Worm is a card that breaks a lot of rules. And it is a card that can be cast from your library for 7 mana while you are searching your library. So essentially, again, I won't go into like the specifics, but I essentially will cast like an X cost, essentially going for Temur Sabertooth, and that will trigger Ragadraga, which will pump the creature, which will allow me more mana. And then whilving my search, I cast my Panglacial Worm, I pump my creature again, and then I continue to resolve the thing that the search that's already on the stack. That has technically been resolved, but it hasn't because the Panglacial Worm goes over the top.
All right, nice, okay.
I had to look into the rules to that to make sure of some certain interaction. Now, you have to hold your deck in a certain way because you're like, well, this is still technically the top part of my library. It's technically not allowed to move because this search hasn't happened yet. It's dumb. It's a ridiculous card, but regardless, I like them to be interchangeable, essentially. Okay. And so if I do find an interesting combo or an interesting busted thing, a lot of the time I will start looking at either decks that do something similar, like I'll start going through Moxfield or I'll start going through EDH that have similar combos to see if when I found that kind of concept that I'm wanting to go with. I much prefer when things interlace and there are multiple pieces that work off other multiple pieces rather than, I have this Thassa's Oracle thing that works with this Thassa's Oracle is Demonization, right? Say I don't want to run Underworld Breach or for instance, we'll talk about Holden's list when it was Ral, right? I think in one of your initial builds, you ran Thassa's Oracle. And me personally, I wasn't a big fan, so I just didn't run it, right? Thassa's Oracle now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so and that was just because, for me, it felt, I don't know, it just felt weird. But yeah, that was just a personal preference of mine when I first saw the list. But yeah, that's typically what I like to do, is I like to build off of different things. And if a card feels like it doesn't fit because of a certain reason, or the combo doesn't have a lot of legs outside of these 3 pieces, yeah, I shelf it for later.
Okay, that makes sense. What about you, Holden? What's your biggest thing you're looking for when you're making that build? Is it the clumping of the combo, or here's the combo, but here's this build I built around it?
I think for me, it's I want to be layering combos, which is a lot of, I think, what you were just talking about, Nate. Like you want to have one initial concept of something that's a really powerful interaction that you feel like is worth brewing around, but also on top of that, you don't want that those cards to just be dead unless you're doing this exact A plus B plus C thing, because that's just bad deck building in any format. It's unrelated to CEDH. You wouldn't want to do that in Modern or Popper or anything else. So yeah, I'm right there with you on that. And a really big thing for me is what I want is I want to be playing cards that are innocuous. I want cards that are, they seem very docile and it's not a big deal. No, I don't even need to politic them. No one is responding. My favorite kind of cards are the cards that when you put them on the stack, people don't say they're passing priority. It's just, they're just okay, yeah. Because obviously that's resolving, right?
Right.
And it's okay, great. Yeah, you're playing your Blood Artist. Okay, well, there's not an obvious way where you could win with this on board, so whatever. And so for me, that's a big part of it, is I want these kind of layered pieces, because what I find is that someone blows you out from winning the game when you try to go for it the first time, and then maybe you're going to try to go for it again in the same turn, and then you're going to come back around to the next turn cycle and plans, and you can really roll with the punches, because CDH is brutal. I mean, it is a back alley. You just got jumped by 3 people who've been waiting and planning to whoop your ass all day. That's the fight. It's not 1v1. It's not even 1v1v1v1. It's 1v3. When you're winning, they're ganging up. So that's a big part of the way that I'm thinking about it too, is what can I do that is breaking parity, not just in card advantage of a 1v1, but breaking parity in the 1v3. The thing I'm doing, a board wipe is a great example. The board wipe is so powerful because you just got all this tempo advantage by knocking out all of the work that your table has done up to this point. So that's why a card like maybe Supreme Verdict is really well positioned in the meta right now, because it's an uncounterable board wipe. And sure, it costs 4 mana, but the mana you spent into it, you gained such a mana advantage by wiping out all these other creatures. Or what you were talking about, which I'm excited to share with you about with my list, cards that are hard to counter. So cards that are creatures, or cards that are maybe like creatures that also don't have like activated abilities, or like things like that. Like there's all these like interesting ways you could tune that. So yeah, I think about a lot of those things when I'm brewing, which is like, how are my combos layered? How do they seem innocuous and docile on the surface, but in reality it's too late. You already have lost the opportunity to interact with me. You should have interacted, 3 steps back, kind of thing. That's why I keep tuning Ral more and more and more towards that direction. I'm taking out all of the haymakers, and the CMC of the deck is dropping and dropping and dropping. And that's because all I want to do is put cantrips and rituals on the stack. Interact whenever you want. It doesn't matter. I'm recasting this commander. I'm flipping it, and I'm going to kill you with it. And you can interact. Like if the entire table gangs up and goes Force, Fierce, Spinebreak Trap, Fluster, like sure. But anyway, the crazy part is when you just look at the table and you go like, Rite of Flame? And they're like, sure, I think that's fine. And they like look at each other and they're like, is it
lose or win? Does it resolve? And yes, you internally, and you're probably, your hands are clammy, you're shaking, you're like, if this resolves internally, I bet Nate's like, okay.
And you're like, perfect. I don't care about this Chromox. I'm going to offer you can't refuse it. And someone's like, I do this in response. You're like, cool, I'm just going to sack this mountain and lava dart your thing, flip Ral.
No.
And they're like, I'm going to kill Ral in response. And you're like, cool, I'm going to cast another spell in response. I'm going to flip Ral again.
And he's still going to flip Ral?
I'm going to tell you, like, you're dead. So, yeah. Oh, my God.
That is so very true. So we've, one thing I want to cover is the restrictions, and then we'll jump into any advice, and then we'll kind of get into the spice you got going on. Does that sound good to you, Holden?
Yeah.
Anything major? Okay, cool. On o'clock, so I know we're getting a little long, so I want to talk about your spice, but I want to get this wrapped up for the viewers at home. But okay, so we've talked about styles of brewing and different styles of how you guys do it. What restrictions do you guys put on yourself? Is there any like, okay, I'm building Ral, but I'm not using, I guess that's a hard question to ask because CEDH we're playing the most optimal, but are there cards yourself when you brew? I guess I don't really have an example of it, so.
No, that's fine. I'll just say really quick, because this is like a pretty short answer for me. There's really or less like restriction as far as actually building the deck in paper and playing it. And I'm not going to play it if it has green in the color identity. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but I don't like green cards. I don't own a lot of the most expensive green cards that I can proxy them, but there is something about the play patterns of playing in green that leads to more of like a value-oriented play style, which I'm not as interested in. And also the kind of like onboard mana dorks into big haymaker thing. Like, I don't know why, for whatever reason, it just doesn't scratch that itch as much. So like, I'm kind of a sans green Andy until, no green till I die kind of thing. And everybody who I play with in paper and stuff, they all know that about me. So like, which in a way is like actually a pretty huge restriction, because I brewed some insane decks that are like Simic or like even some Bant decks and stuff like that. And the decks themselves are actually busted. And I think if I didn't have that restriction, I'd probably put up some real numbers with them. Like, okay. I've got this like crazy Tameo brew in the chamber that does so much dumb stuff that with Sage of Hours and Neoform and Hardened Scales and all this really crazy stuff that like, it just is exactly what I want to be doing. But I don't really enjoy it. So I'm not going to like, especially for a hobby and something that like, it's like I want to be like having fun with it. I know if I was playing these cards in paper, it'd be fun like one time, and then I'd be like, this is boring. Like whatever. I just don't care. Like I cannot say the words "Birds of Paradise" out. Like it's just gonna piss me off. So that's one like kind of like hard restriction, I guess. But outside of that, it's just like I used to set restrictions. I guess I talked about this before, of like not brewing decks that had already have a winning deck, like a top winning deck with those same commanders, even if like my version of the 99 would maybe be like 10 plus cards different. But I kind of just changed that restriction recently. Keep hinting at is a Rograk Tevish Zot list. And it's not like those commanders have never been played together before. And in fact, they've been played together in like 2 very polarizing ways. There's like a Polysire, kind of like a poly interesting. And then also there's another version of that deck that's just like turbo ad nauseum, like do the thing, like basically. Now, I will say there is a little bit of that where if you do set some restriction, it kind of like it sometimes can like allow you to do things that other people wouldn't have thought of because they don't have the restrictions in place. Like they're just going to do the best thing, right? Like it's kind of like I'm just going to play all the good cards, and that's how you get a format that's just all TNK and TNT, and that's okay. But I don't want to do that. That's not fun for me. So
no, Holden. No, that is not okay.
Hey, you said it, not me. Listen,
no.
All
We
the
just
viewers
don't
out
like
there,
it.
Holden
It's not
Prio
okay.
approves your net decks, and it's totally fine. Keep bringing them to the tournament, and I'll keep beating you with Raw.
Well, I'm super excited. What about you, Nate? What restrictions do you put on yourself, man? And like, we'll clarify that for everyone out there. We're not talking like, oh, I'm not playing Grim Monarch because I don't own Grim Monarch. We're not talking. We're build the most optimal. But Holden made a good point. He doesn't brew green. He doesn't like green. He doesn't like the play pattern. Well, what's your internal restriction, Nate? What's I don't brew something, or what is it to you?
Right. Yeah. No, I totally understand. I don't really have much in the ways of restrictions. I don't mind playing with any kind of combo pieces. I don't mind the idea of considering any. Had people come to me and be like, "Is like," and I know again, this is something else that I've said on the channel once or twice. It's like, is CEDH mill possible? And it's like, in theory, sure. Like, there's probably something out there that could probably work. And I've
I built
about it, and exactly right. So like, it's not like you can't, right? And so I try not to restrict myself because when you think to yourself or say to yourself, like, I really like this, but it's not viable in CEDH, you just immediately cut off so many cards. You cut off so many thoughts. You cut off so many interactions. You cut off so many things that you could potentially brew by doing it. Now, are there going to be ones that are just inherently weaker than others? Of course there is, right? Like if you're going for commander damage in CEDH, you're gonna run into some pitfalls. Sure, doesn't mean it's not possible.
Slicer has entered the chat.
Exactly, right? Like Commander Damage one's the thing, and then he gets printed, and then he starts showing up, and then Tabernacle all of a sudden becomes a land people are playing, right? And so it's just I try not to really restrict myself. So I used to restrict myself, which was actually really fun. I don't really do it much now, but back in the day when I was first getting into CEDH, I didn't even know like CEDH was a quote unquote thing. I didn't call it CEDH. We just wanted to build something as powerful as we could. And I thought that I had to own all the cards. And I was, back then I didn't have a lot of money. And so I built a Vadric Astral Archmage list that was very low. The other CEDH players think that because I just played my Fire die, by the time it got back to me, only 1 mana, and my Pirate's Prize is only 1 mana, and I just churned through my list, and my ending combo was like Bergie and Searing Touch.
That's awesome.
It was because that was the budget that I had to restrict myself to, and I've considered rebuilding that list again too, just for the hell of it. But I really try not to. I will say inherently there are some cards that are just bad. That's relative though. Because maybe
Llanowar, way to break Forest, and
yeah, terrible acid rain. So, but yeah, I really try not to restrict myself in any way, because then I feel like I cut off a lot of chances for me to brew something.
Okay, no, that makes total and make perfect sense to it. Well, you guys have given me a lot to think about with my brew process, but as we wrap this up, Interlin. And the final thing, if I'm just going to cut this and make a quick interview with me and Nate, but what's the word, any ways or any ideas, anything you could give to the viewers out there on their next brew, their next build, their next idea? What's something out there you can give them?
So for me, I kind of break it down into like, I guess maybe like 4 points as to like in my mind, like, okay, this is what I would tell somebody who's like, hey, I just want to start brewing the way that you brew. For me, one of the first ones is no bad cards is actually a good philosophy. Like, it's important to not just think that, okay, well, I don't want to do like just like the standard Najila no bad cards thing or the standard TNK no bad cards thing. It's like, okay, well, fine. You can have a different commander, you can have a different concept, whatever. You should still be thinking about your list, if it's CEDH, as no bad cards. Now, the big asterisk there is, if the card is the world's perfect card in your deck, then of course you should play it, and then it's not a bad card. And, I guess that's just like an important way to be approaching deck building in general is there's a reason why everyone's playing these cards. They're really good. But you don't really want to listen to that when you're in the early stages of the brewing process. So when I'm taking 150 card list, because that's a lot of times what I'll do, I'll put together like the first, I'm not even looking at how many total cards this is. I just start putting them all together into the mox build. Oh, okay, this card, this card, this card. And then before I know it, it's 150, 180 card list. And I haven't even put together a mana base yet. It's like, okay, so now I got to start cutting and restricting. But when I'm doing that initial list, I'm not thinking, okay, I'm going to add Ristic. I'm going to add Ristic. I'm going to add, it's just like, no. I'm thinking about all the weird stuff and putting all that in first. And then we tune it down, and then we kind of restrict, and we start making these kind of cutting decisions about, okay, maybe I shouldn't have all of this fringe stuff, but I still need some of it in order to do my thing. So that's a big point. I also think it's really important that you ask yourself, like, could I be playing a 100% truly, like, quote, strictly better version of this exact deck in these colors if I was playing a different commander or a different like concept for this commander? And if yes, just stop brewing. Like, it's okay to realize that maybe you should be playing something else. And I've done that before. I've built a whole deck. I've completely had this awesome idea. Everything's really cool. It's interesting. How come you're not just on Talion though? Like, it was like a Demir deck, and I was like, yeah, you're right. It's like, okay, I guess I'm gonna just scrap this for now,
I've definitely been there. I get that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And another really important thing too, I think, is when you're brewing, if you're a new brewer, just ask yourself, like, is this like just fun and cute, or is it actually good? And if you think in your heart, like, wow, this actually might have legs, like this seems like it's actually good, keep going. Don't let other people tell you, well, like, I can't tell you how many times somebody told me, well, don't you know that Krark and Sakashima is just the better Is It Storm deck? And I would just say, I totally understand where you're coming from, but I still have to try to figure this RAL deck out. And I think there's a world where it has certain parts of it that are a lot better. And I'm really glad I didn't listen to those people, And Karkashima is an amazing deck, and it's got a bunch of people working on it, and they're all fantastic. And I love Ken Bauman and all those people. But I had to figure out my RAL thing. Like, and so that's kind of, it's not just something I would tell somebody else, but it's something that I really try to listen to for myself.
No, definitely. And you nail it right on the head. Is you wanna, I hate to say it, like people say I love Abzan so much, but I don't want to play Tayum. I can't stand the play patterns of Tayum. That's not a deck I enjoy. It's not. We have a player in our group, Jay, that plays it great, and they play it awesome. I just can't stand it. And it's like you said, you could go play the Croc Shakashima, the quote unquote best Is It Storm deck. But I hate to say it, I've played against enough tournaments with that deck. Watching Nate at least play RAL, and I can't wait to hopefully jam some games with you and watch you play it. And just the way at least he does, it's just crazy how I win. You're like, what? I don't have anything. I just played a second I just played Lattimore Elves. What do you mean you win?
Not quick enough, bro.
But what about you?
Turn two's a privilege, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it is. What about you? What's some final advice you'd give the viewers at home, Nate?
So basically everything Holden said, definitely I was going to touch on all that, but he hit it perfectly. The biggest one that I always harp on is the last point that he made, is if you genuinely believe in something, if deep down you're like, no, I absolutely can make this work, I just have to get it together, just do it. Don't let someone tell you that your list is bad and you're bad for building it and you should just do something else because that's lame. It's not productive for anybody. It's not productive, like, not even for the person saying it to you. Like, they should just mind their business. Like, it's none of their concern what you want to build, right? The other thing that I would probably say is, and that's not to try to say that you don't know what you're doing when you're brewing, or that you don't have a concept that you have a lot of experience with, but learning from other people has been one of the biggest. Like, for instance, I didn't consider RAL before watching Thunder Conductor's list and seeing Holden, and all of a sudden that was just something that clicked, and I was like, okay, hold on. So I started looking, and I started like, why is this like this? And then you ask these questions, and you start to piece together yourself rather than taking a stock list, not asking any questions, and then being like, well, he must run this for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but he does. So I have to. I don't have a choice. Like, that's not the way it works. Like, if you just like ask him, like one of the biggest things, like initially, was like I saw the hidden strings in Ral. You know, I'm like, oh wait, no, this is fucking cracked. Actually, this is actually really
so good.
sick. Yeah.
So good.
Sorry for Chris for having to probably
1,000 cards.
some of my words. But yeah, ask questions, get advice from people that genuinely are on your same level, right? Because you do definitely have those people that are like, oh, I don't know if that's going to work. I don't think that's a good strategy. You'll have that. But just ask questions of people and try to work with people as much as you can until you've put together something that you feel you're proud of, and then just play it and just stomp the crap out of people, and then get the best reactions that you could possibly get when you're playing something that you've brewed. Because the best thing in the absolute world when you're playing something that about, you go, okay, I'm gonna cast Meeting of Minds, and everyone goes, what the hell is Meeting of Minds?
Oh, you don't know CEDH All-Star Meeting of the Minds? That's what I like.
You're like, what are you talking about? This is like the best card in my deck. This is basically Ancestral Recall. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and just roll with it, man. Just take what you believe in and ask questions, do some research, do some digging, look at similar lists, and just do it.
All right. That's awesome, man. I appreciate you giving that advice. And Holden, again, I appreciate you talking about everything, talking about brews, giving us a history of who you are and why you play and what you enjoy. But we've been talking about it the whole episode. We've given like little sneak peeks throughout the thing. But let's talk about this spicy brew, man. You got me and Nate's interest in the preamble talking about this. Like you said before, you don't cast anything, you're not activating anything. How does this work? Like walk us through this. Well, first off, who's the commander? We'll start with that.
So I guess that's the important part, is that the way I have this built right now, it's Rograk Tevish Zot, but it doesn't have to be. It just, at least for the way that I'm building it, it has to pretty low bar. So you could just pick whatever commander you want as long as it has the color identity of black. I spent a lot of time thinking about it, and this kind of was that perfect moment I was talking about where I found this crazy interaction that required me to be playing at least black. And then also, I already had this super bonkers Rograk Tevish Zot Magecraft list that was running Hazel's Brewmaster into Kiki Jiki lines that I think people don't realize is a combo that kills them instantly. So basically, I'll take it through it as quick as I can. So the way that this works is, I first started thinking about, wow, Hazel's Brewmaster is really busted into Mithrasios, because you can just Brewmaster your Devoted Druid, and because it gives it like pseudo haste, because it's not actually a creature, it's an artifact, it's a food. So then you just activate it over and over again, putting the -1/-1 counters, but it doesn't matter because it's not a creature, and you make infinite green mana, and then as a result, you can go through your Survival of the Fittest to go get any creature that you want, including the Thrasios out of the command zone. You can draw your whole deck, you can Finale, and you can also dump the Thorkel into the yard to Finale the Thorkel back into play. And like all these, there's ways to utilize this in this powerful way, right? So I saw that shell, and I was like, okay, but is that the only thing you can be doing with Hazel's Brewmaster? Because Hazel's Brewmaster and Devoted Druid is awesome, but I mean, come on, let's get real. It sucks because you have to play green cards. So I started thinking, well, what? So can't you just do that with Kiki Jiki? So like, if you have your Kiki Jiki in the graveyard, you can just Brewmaster, and the food exiles the Kiki Jiki. The food then taps to make a copy of a non-legendary creature, which is your Brewmaster, which makes a Brewmaster, which makes a food when it ETBs. But that new Brewmaster has haste, and the food doesn't need to have haste, and all food now have the ability because of everything that it's exiled. So now you just Kiki Jiki, but it's actually food. Have like a One Ring Protection or a Fog or whatever, right? So that line popped into my head, and I'm like, okay, that's crazy. Like that seems really powerful. So what deck do I want to be playing that's red-black that can do this stuff? And then separate from that, there's this other concept that I've been really thinking about a lot because of all the RAL stuff, which is Magecraft shenanigans, right? Fury Storm is Chain of Spawn. Okay, I'm just saying that. It's not actually, but it kind of is, right? So Fury Storm is a 4-mana red instant that says copy target instant or sorcery. And then if you, for however many times you cast your commander from the command zone this game, copy Fury Storm. So all you have to do is put any instant on the stack. It doesn't matter what it is. So you put a Dark Ritual on the stack. And then as long as you've cast your commander, which in this deck, we have Rograk, which means we always cast it on turn 0, assuming someone doesn't go turn 1 Lotus Plains Dranith or whatever. So we always have the second mode activated. So you just go Dark Ritual, hold priority, as we do, and you go Fury Storm, right? You Fury Storm, copying the Dark Ritual. Fury Storm triggers creating a copy. I think it's when it resolves, actually. It creates a copy, and that copy is copying the Fury Storm. Let me rephrase that. It is for sure a trigger. So you put it on the stack, it creates a trigger, almost like Storm in a way. It's copying now the Fury Storm, and you can do that infinitely. So you just keep making new copies of Fury Storm that are copying Fury Storm that are copying Fury Storm. Well, Fury Storm doesn't do anything. It just copies other things, right? But why does it matter? These are Magecraft triggers. Magecraft is anytime you cast an instant or sorcery or copy them, right? Well, how do we get paid off for Magecraft? The same way we do with Chain of Smog, where Chain of Smog, you target yourself and you just copy it over and over again. Sure, you're discarding your whole hand, but if you have a Witherbloom of Pledges in play, you drain the table. Same thing if you have Professor Onyx, which is that Liliana Planeswalker that's basically says Magecraft, drain the table, or drain for 1 or 2 or whatever. And then what else can you get paid off for with this? Well, how about that Ashling the Flame Dancer or Fire Dancer or whatever, the new one? That one says Magecraft Rummage, so discard a card, draw a card. And then it also says if it's the second time this happened this turn, deal 2 damage to each opponent, each creature they control. So that's just like kind of added icing on the cake or whatever. And then the third time it resolves, add 4 red mana to your mana. But each time it happens, including the first 3 and every time after, you always rummage. So if you Fury Storm with an Ashling in play, what do you get? Well, you get 2 damage to everybody and all the creatures. You get 4 red mana, so you just paid for the Fury Storm, so it's free, and you end up with 4 red mana. And you get to go through your entire deck until you want to stop. So what do you stop at? Well, you fill your entire graveyard until you hit a Underworld Breach and you cast it and you win the game. Also, if we're on Stormkiln Artist, this just says Magecraft, make a treasure. So now you just make infinite mana. So I'm starting to put together this crazy Magecraft package also that's in these colors, which normally you'd be playing Magecraft shenanigans in like black-green because of Witherbloom Apprentice, or you'd be playing them in like Izzet sort of stuff with like Archmage Emeritus and that kind of stuff, right? So then I'm also playing Chain of Smog. So I'm starting to think about all of these, right? So now if I want to be playing Kiki Jiki, I should be probably playing Zealous Conscripts. And is Zealous Conscripts a good card to be playing right now? Remember my adage about no bad cards? Well, yeah, because what else can Zealous Conscripts do when it's at its floor, when you're not comboing with it? It can steal a Rhystic Study, apparently. That card says untapped target permanent. I never even like read it that way. For some reason in my mind, it was untapped target creature. So you can just like yoink somebody's Rhystic Study and then go off for the turn. And now you have like card draw protection kind of, or you could steal somebody else's if they were dumb enough to already play like a Grand Abolisher or whatever, right? So all of this is coming together in my mind. And then the spice hits, okay? So this is the other thing I've been thinking about. Can I break the most broken mechanic? So what are the most broken mechanics? What would you say? Like, what's the most broken mechanic in Magic? Like, if we're talking about like trample or haste or whatever, or storm or like things like that.
I would think it's
Storm always comes to mind for me.
Yeah,
Storm.
Yeah, Storm's busted, right? Gravestorm, that's another one that's only really been printed on 2 cards now.
Yeah, Gravestorm.
There's some other kind of broken ones are like flashback, buyback, retrace, things like that, like things where you can get recursion, which is split second, like boomerang, kind of like just a bounce effect. There's slime, but these cards are like kind of like utility cards, right? Mm-hmm. But what if we don't give a shit about what the card does? We just break the fact that because you're not allowed to do that, no one can interact. That includes you, right? You can't do anything on the stack. If split second's on the stack, you can't do anything on top of it except special actions. So unflipping a morph would be an example of a special action, right?
I'm nervous. I'm nervous. I don't know for sure where this goes, but special actions, man. Crap. Like me and Dana played against each other enough times. He does like, special action. You don't do anything. I'm like, Judge. And
it doesn't use the stack. Like, why does it exist? It just breaks Magic. I love it, right? I'm so glad that you're a special action brother. Let's go, Nate. But yeah, it's so. That was the first line of thinking, like about a year ago. Like, so separate from my Rakdos deck, I'm thinking about a year ago. As I was going to Fishbowl or whatever, and then coming back, I don't even remember what the name of the commander is. It's a Sultai morph deck that's like you can pay once per turn. You can pay 0 mana to cast a morph. Or to like unflip, or to like flip a morph, or whatever.
It's like
draw cards
or something. So
I
know what you're talking about. Yeah,
I spent a lot of time brewing it, like way too much time. And there were already lists that were doing well, but what I was trying to do was break the mechanic of you put a split second spell in the stack, and now all of a sudden that is a better than Grand Abolisher or better than silence. It means no things could somehow lead to you winning the game, literally no one can interact. There is no moment in time for someone to interact unless somebody else has a morph that they're going to outflip, right? So I figured it out. I figured out some weird lines with like Protein Hulk and like some weird shenanigans of making it work. And it just was like A plus B plus C plus D. It was too many pieces. It was all to be doing. And it meant you had to play like a full morph deck, which when you sit on the table, like the jig is already up kind of that like you're doing weird morph like bullshit. So people aren't like, it's not like they're going to be like totally taken by surprise, right? So then we went deep. What else does Split Second say? It actually says you can't put anything on the stack. You can't cast any spells. You can't activate abilities. And there's a big caveat: except mana ability. So Llanowar Elves can tap for green, right? And your Forest can tap for green. And your Phyrexian Altar can sacrifice a creature to fake mana. So this is where shit gets crazy. I was already in my Rograk Tevezat deck playing a combo that's based off of this Protein Hulk line that I don't think I actually even came up with. I think maybe I read it somewhere, but it's the Forsaken Miner, which is like the Gravecrawler effect. That's a relatively recent addition to Magic. It's a black 2/2 skeleton that has recursion out of the yard whenever you commit a crime. So you have to pay a black mana. Anytime you commit a crime, you can pay a black mana. And if you do, it just returns to the battlefield tap. So if you play that, plus Warren Soul Trader, which is like Phyrexian Altar on a stick, except for you pay a life and it gives you a treasure. And you play like a Blood Artist effect that targets to drain. It can't be like a Zulapar Cutthroat that drains everybody. It has to target to commit the crime. If you do that, that kills the table infinitely, and there's no other spells being cast. So through Heuristic, for example, you can instant speed machine gun the table whenever you want, and there's no more spells being cast at any point in time. So like you could kind of protect this by like putting a wheel on the stack, and then if the wheel resolves, then start recurring the thing, like as long as the stuff is in your graveyard to begin with. For example, if you're in like a very heavy reanimator deck. And I was thinking about stuff like that. So the problem though is that Warren Soul Trader sacrifices to make treasures. That is an activated ability. It's not technically a mana ability. Phyrexian Altar though is a mana ability. So hear me out. Phyrexian Altar in play. Phyrexian Altar is a 3-mana artifact. It's a sacrifice a creature, add 1 mana of any color you can. Any Blood Artist style effect. Anything that says when you sacrifice a thing, target takes damage or gets milled or does whatever, right?
Yeah.
And Forsaken Miner in your yard or in play. You put any split second spell on the stack, you hold priority, you sacrifice any creature or the miner itself. It hits the yard as part of the cost. It's now in the yard when the trigger hits the stack for Blood Artist to drain somebody for 1. And with the trigger on the stack, that triggers the Forsaken Miner that says, hey, I'm in the yard, pay 1 black mana and you can recur me. And you stack them so that you drain the people first, and then you pay the black mana that you just now made off of the Phyrexian Altar. And you loop this over and over again. No spells are being cast, although it wouldn't matter because split seconds on the stack, but no spells are being cast, and literally no one can respond in any way whatsoever. And why does this matter? This just is, in a way, almost like, yeah, that's cool, but that's just like a weird rules interaction. Why I think this matters is because we have so many value engines in the format right now, so many heuristic studies, so much of this, like, everybody's trying to win on top of each other and do all this crazy stuff, that imagine always resolve my Grand Abolisher. That's essentially what this combo says. That whenever I want, as long as I set the pieces up, I can just always resolve my Silence or my Grand Abolisher. So that's my kind of most recent concept in Brew that I've been building. And all the black and red split second cards, or like enough of them that I would want to play, are actually okay. Like Sudden Shock is a shock for 2 mana. That's not terrible. It's a removal piece. Extirpate is really good against all the graveyard decks. And when someone else tries to go for the Brewmaster line, you extirpate their Devoted Druid out of the yard. Yeah, go ahead. You'd like to counter that? Well, too bad. It has split second. Oh, yeah, you forgot how that mechanic works? You can't respond. That's how it works. And so that's a big part of the Brewing concept. So this deck has this crazy backdoor win that no one sees coming, and has all these creature-based Magecraft combos that no one sees coming, and has all these creature-based Brewmaster Kiki-Jiki or Kiki-Jiki Zealous Conscript combos that people aren't going to be expecting to see in a Rakdos list. And all of that is wrapped up in this tight little bow that I put on top of my Turbo Rograk, so infinite mana, turn 1, just go the fuck, while also being able to lean on your fallback of your 5-mana Planeswalker that will win the game if left unchecked. That's the crazy part. If you ult a Tevezat, you win the game also. So there's just so many places where it's hard to interact that I really think this deck has legs. And this comes back to the, what advice would you give to an up and coming brewer? Do you think your deck has legs? Do you believe in it enough? Keep tuning it. So that's where I'm at right now. The deck's down to 100 cards. It's real. I've been playtesting it a bunch, goldfishing it. I bought all the cards for it. Yeah, like I didn't just proxy them, I bought them. And that's going to be the one where I could really use some help getting to a point where it's really tuned down.
Yeah, well, I'll say it right now, and I hope Nate's down for it. Let us know. I hope you keep us updated on Discord, but also if you want to jump, do you like doing spell table games?
Sure.
And everything?
Yeah,
Are you down? Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully we can jam a game because I want to watch you kick in the blue farm of Chris over here, but or I guess we gotta find. Do we have a good blue farm player in our pod? Besides Chris, I think he's the only one that plays it, right?
I think he's the only one that's ever played it. I refuse to sleeve it up just because, like I said, I don't like to play patterns. It's boring to me.
That's fair.
I can't win it split second. It's bullshit.
Dude, it is. Dude, just talking about that, like you said, there's nothing anybody can do. They can't interact. They can't respond. You're just like,
I mean, there's nothing else in Magic that does that. Actually,
no, there's not.
Because even you could make the argument. Well, what about if I have a Grand Abolishment? But yeah, Odawara is still a card. Like there are actually still outs. Mm-hmm. Play to your outs. Well, no one has an out. There are no outs. Yeah. You're dead. Like I love.
Oh man, I can't wait till we're all at a tournament. I hear Judge. Everyone goes to the table. It's all the table.
Dude, this deck, I might have to rename it. Right now, it's called Go Home, Roger. Like it's a sister reference from that weird sitcom when we were kids. But because you just keep sending Roger Rograk back to the command zone over and over again. But I might have to just rename the deck Judge Calls deck because I know that's what's going to happen. It's just going to be nonstop.
Oh yeah,
100%. Man.
Like because there's a Forsaken Miner, I can respond to that. Like we can have this conversation all day, bud.
Because I wanted to say that too. I was like, well, can't you technically respond because you're doing something else? But no, because split second.
Nope, because it's on the stack.
Yeah,
that's nuts. I love that.
Holden, that is dirty. That is spicy, man. I appreciate you sharing with us and viewers. You guys got that spice here. Well, Holden, it's been a blast talking with you, man. And I hope we get to do some more chats, and I hope we get to do some more brewing time. And hey, you guys, if you have any decks that you would like to see Nate and Holden maybe do something, let us know.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Do you got? Yeah,
love to.
Holden yourself. Do you have some socials you'd like to post out there? And we'll definitely get you a link down below. But let the viewers know where they can find you.
Yeah, you could if you don't mind, I'll make sure to send it over. But just you could put my my Moxfield link down below and maybe my Twitter. Those are the best places to get in touch with me. I respond to literally every single comment on Moxfield on any list. So if you see any deck that I've ever brewed or ever built on my Moxfield, and you put a comment there, I will respond to you. And I actually care about what people think about it, and I want to work with other people. I'm not someone who's like, no, these are my precious, don't touch them. Like it's like, no, I want to work and let's do this together. And
absolutely.
That's why the RAL community is so exciting for me. And then so it's Holden _Prio. So it's HOLDEN _PRIO. And then you can also find me on Twitter. It's at Shake Gently. All spelled correctly, no spaces, nothing like that. But it shows up as Holden Prio as well. And I have a YouTube channel. Nice. You can search for Holden Prio MTG, where I'll post me whiteboarding my buddy's Guy's Cradle and other shenanigans like that, but also some really cool content about how to combo, how to hold priority, how to storm off with RAL, deck choices and decisions, like fun stuff like that.
All right, awesome, man. Well, again, me and Nate can't thank you enough. I hope you had a blast because I learned so much from you. It was been a pleasure, man. But you guys, remember, stay confident and not condescending, and we'll catch you guys all next week. It's been a blast.